Get up off that thing and shrink till you feel better. Get up off that thing and Kang.
Ant-Man.
Fuck off. Fuck's sake. Oh my god, people, it's good to be back. It's good to be back. How are you all doing out there? Obviously, you know, it's another lovely week in the lovely, lovely UK. And today we are going to be doing a review for Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. Or as Fergus might call it. What do you call it, Fergus?
Ant-Man and the Ant.
Now, I swear there's a band called Adam and the Ants.
Yes, there is.
Yeah,
yes.
so is this part of the running joke, possibly?
I don't know where this came from. I think I felt Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania was too hard to remember, seeing as there's already an Ant-Man and the Wasp. So Ant-Man and the Ant.
You know what? I was thinking that actually because it's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a.
I just call it Ant-Man Quantumania. To be fair, I think that's that's how I should have called it.
To be honest, and also I love the fact it's not really a big spoiler because it's the title logo at the end of the movie. Ant-Man is literally the center part of Quantumania, which I thought was really interesting. Yeah, so that I thought it was quite interesting how they actually enveloped that into the movie. Well, but that's not a spoiler at all, people. But yeah, so obviously, people, what we're doing now, what we decided to do for the foreseeable future is we're going to start recording 2 episodes a week. So you're listening to the first episode today, which is going to be our Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania review. See, we all forget the Wasp part, which is a bit unfortunate for this movie. And and then next episode you will hear us talk about a possible discussion on streaming services that we've been teasing, because I know there's a big discussion there definitely at the moment we should be having.
Yeah, don't cross the streams.
I knew that joke.
And that is James's one contribution for that episode.
Yeah, yep. James won't be in that episode. That is one contribution. Just remember him fondly.
I don't think we need to do it now. I think that's just it.
Yeah, pretty much it. Yeah,
20 seconds. There you go. Done.
Yeah, no, definitely. But yeah, no. Obviously, what we're going to be doing today, people, is we're doing the review, and then we'll be doing a spoiler discussion at the end. So the plan is we will be going through maybe like 15-20 minutes doing a review for the movie, and then afterwards we will give you a spoiler warning alarm, and then we will be going into the spoiler discussion at the end. And this will last about, we say 40 minutes at most. We'll probably go
see how it goes.
See a little bit longer. But yeah, so obviously we don't have a lot really. We don't really talk about the news much anymore. But obviously, just to know, so you know, we do have a DC discussion coming up. Myself and James will be involved in that, and we'll be doing some predictions of what the rest of Phase 1 could be as well. I have a few ideas out there. James Gunn has actually also been teasing some extra characters that are going in, possibly Nightwing and everything, and who is definitely needed now.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
I know a lot of people joke out there saying, "Well, Nightwing is the man, the big lover of the DCU, and his ass is perfection." That's a common thing among DC fans. If Nightwing doesn't have an ass drawn to perfection, he's not Nightwing. That's
good to know.
It's a good chance for them to bring for James to go on to bring some characters to a big screen which haven't been on a big screen.
Actually, it's interesting because obviously there's news that Marvel's going to be slowing down their TV show, well, not necessarily production but release schedule now. Yeah. So yeah, maybe that does finally let DC have a little bit of space to come in. I know I'm definitely going to be watching and seeing how they're doing because I've never really jumped into the DC films that much. Suicide Squad, the second one, was good. So I'm this is a nice point for me to potentially become reinvested if they don't screw it up.
I think you should watch The Flash coming out. I think you could go into The Flash with not really knowing too much of the DCU, because obviously they've said that basically this is the reset, essentially, the Flashpoint. Obviously myself and James know if you want a good, very good DC movie, animated wise, just watch the animated movies, because they have one called Flashpoint, and it's really good. They literally just use that script and just go off that, but the problem is though is that there's characters in that you need to have had established, like there's a character called Reverse Flash who's his main villain literally.
Did he go really slow?
No, that's the funny thing. He's just in yellow. He's in yellow and red instead of red and yellow.
That's not very Reverse. Oh, I get it, right, yeah, costume.
Yeah, he's a very fucked up character, to be honest. Like, he once went back in time after Barry's parents were killed and arrested, and then he adopted him just to fuck with his life, but he was the one that killed his mother, and yeah, the Reverse Flash is a very fucked up character. I'm interested to see how he plays out, but no, Flashpoint I highly recommend watching, and I'm wondering what they're going to do with the... Have you seen the trailer for the...
I have, yes.
What did you think of the trailer?
Michael Keaton's back. Awesome.
Yes, that is true.
That's about the only take. So, yes,
and he
more
moves
Michael
quite
Keaton.
a bit in that trailer.
Yeah.
He moves much more than I expected.
Yeah, considering he's getting on.
I'm interested by Zod.
All right.
Like the fact that Zod's back, like from Man of Steel 1, and they're literally taking it back to Man of Steel, like what if Superman wasn't around for the events of Man of Steel and it's Supergirl this time, and like how that plays out. And yeah, but we'll see. You know, we'll get into a further discussion on that for the DC episode. But today, people, we are here to talk about Marvel. I think when it comes to the spoiler discussion, we'll touch on what Chaz was on about how they're slowing down now with the MCU, which I think is definitely needed, and I think we'll have discussion points in regards to that.
But at the same time, there is quite a lot in the Ant-Man movie to talk about in terms of connecting up to future stuff, which we'll go over a little bit more there.
Yes, so. I do have a few points to make on that, actually. A few images we will be bringing up when we get to the spoilers section, which I think will link into a couple of the movies which are getting sequels in the next year or two. So yeah, but I think it's time, people, that we get into the review. So I think we'll do the traditional route. So Fergus, are we ready to kick off?
Absolutely. Let's talk about ants and some wasps.
Okay, so right, we'll just do an open discussion. Who fancies going first? Just giving their initial opinions on the movie.
It was okay.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think they know that the Ant-Man movies are not the best.
Well, I really liked the first two Ant-Man movies, but this felt very different from those.
There's a lot of Marvel lore that links to basically everything else that seems to be quite shoehorned into, well, not even shoehorned. The purpose of Ant-Man is to further or introduce other Marvel elements that will be major going forwards.
Yeah, now that I think about it, they've used him already in Endgame to
huge effect.
Yeah, exactly. It's strange that of all characters, it's Ant-Man who's making big effects in the plot. But there you go.
I mean, I'm along the same lines. I think
Oh.
Yeah. We'll go. Basically, people, as we have our streams up as we go, and we like to get our information going. But going off the initial reviews for this movie, it's a 48 on Metascore and a 6.1 in user score.
Actually, surprises me, to be honest. I'm surprised it's that low for the user score.
I get that. And on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 47 rating and an 84 audience score.
Oh.
So it's interesting how Rotten Tomatoes has a big of a flip side in regards to that. So I'm wondering, like, in regards to the user score for Quantumania, it's a lot of people have been comparing it to Shark Boy and Lava Girl back in the day, and
I can see that the costume design is very Spy Kids 3D.
Yeah, I get that. The problem is that you've literally got a movie about ants and wasps and shrinking, and it's not going to be Winter Soldier. It's not going to be like Iron Man. It's not going to be those and that's the purpose.
Yeah, no, I get that. Like, the world that they're in is very interesting. They themselves are maybe not the most interesting characters. They're kind of.
Well, let's just roll it off quickly. Let's go for the cast initially, and then we'll go into the plot, and then our final thoughts. So, how do we feel about? Let's start off with the big introduction to the MCU, because obviously he is the main driving force. Is this entire saga going forward? That is Jonathan Majors as Kang the Conqueror. How did we find Jonathan Majors?
Very good.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes. Yeah, he was interesting. This is the non-spoiler review, wasn't it?
Yes, this is the non-spoiler-free, correct, yeah.
I can't go through too much, so I want to expand on this point in the spoiler section. But yeah, I thought he was okay. I did like him. I'm not as massively infused about Kang as everybody else is. He's going to be a big part of future franchises that's been set up in Loki, and with the whole timeline thing. So I'm interested to see how that character kind of or variations develop. So one thing I wasn't really going to compare to, you got Thanos, who is the greatest villain in the MCU, in my opinion, and I think there were some interesting aspects of Kang in Quantumania that gave him some kind of like interesting humanity and motivations. But he still ended up feeling a little bit like a generic villain, especially towards the end.
So I see what you mean about some of the parallels to Thanos in terms of, I guess, personality and demeanour. But personally, I think that, again, it was a really strong introduction, I think. He had a kind of very calm, almost way, kind of presence. and then almost regretful as well in his demeanour, which was quite an interesting take. It's very rare that he actually is worked up or speaks loudly or shouts. And I think that, he does have quite a strong presence. I think, personally, a good introduction to potentially, a hopefully well-received movie villain going forward.
Yeah, I think he should be quite a popular villain going forwards. His power levels are insane.
I mean, I am interested to see the future with this character.
Yeah, we'll get into that more in the
past, the
spoiler
present,
discussion.
and the future. We could say,
Well,
because we could say, Kang is a time traveler. That's comic book. That's non-spoiler territory. He's a time traveler. That's the whole purpose of him.
Yeah.
And he has. We'll get into the spoiler discussion. Links to possible characters coming up that are going to be introduced in future movies. For myself, so I've read in reviews that he was actually approached to play this character. He wasn't cast. He was approached to play this character by Marvel because he was in a movie called The Last Man in San Francisco. It was a popular movie. The Last Black Man in San Francisco. Sorry, I haven't seen the movie myself personally, but it's about a black man who searches for home in a changing city that seems to have left him behind. Supposedly, he's not the main character in the movie, but he's the secondary character, and he plays an excellent role there. They approached him, and literally a year later, he was in another property which we'll talk about in the spoilers section. But yeah, and then he was in Lovecraft Country. This man has been exploding. He was in The Harder They Fall, the recent black centric cowboy movie, and he's got Creed 3 coming out soon. And he was also in a movie about the first ever black fighter pilot, or the first famous black fighter pilot in the Vietnam War, I believe. So, Jonathan Majors, I think you are definitely correct in regards to his demeanour. He has a very Machiavellian approach to himself. Like he's very proper how he speaks. He's very structured, but you don't fuck with him.
It was well acted. So I'll definitely agree with that. I think I don't dislike him. So just to make it clear, I thought he was good. I just don't think he was.
You're not sure if he's as strong as Thanos was, perhaps. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that comes into the approach of the variants of Kang. We can say variants because he's known for having variants throughout. Because obviously we've got the movie The Kang Dynasty coming out, which I'm very intrigued. When we get to the spoiler discussion, I think that's majorly where we'll talk about where his presence is going to be. But I think Jonathan Majors, he is a huge acting presence in this movie, and him and another character we'll talk about in a little bit did excellent in the movie. Let's go on to Paul Rudd, the man no one can hate. Paul Rudd as Ant-Man, Scott Lang.
Yeah, again, for me personally, he pretty much always knocks a park out with these characters, or his character in these films, and he's pretty much done the same thing. It's funny and likeable character. Nothing particularly different from the others, but always enjoyable to watch.
He's okay.
Here we go.
I was wondering when the Fergus hot takes were coming.
So, I don't know if it's Paul Rudd or the character of Ant-Man, but the stuff in the real world before they go to the quantum land is kind of trying to be Deadpool. And then he's not got the same charisma or humour, or he's not pulling off those sort of Deadpool-like jokes. And when he is in the quantum realm, he's just a bit rubbish. It was just like he's going to be a generic American.
Do you think overwhelmed, possibly, by his position, like how
he's an Avenger. He's supposed to be a superhero, and he's basically just fairly generic middle American dad type.
That's actually what I like about the character, actually, because he's not. When he's superhero, and he isn't superhero. He's superhero because of the costume, but he's very much, at least was, a normal, a normal person. Just happened to get himself into this superhero like. But I remember the first film, right insane, by stealing the Ant-Man costume. So yeah, with that is a key element of the character, and I actually really like that. I find it more interesting.
So, in regards to the character, I think I can understand where Fergus is coming from. I do have a counterpoint to this. So, Spider-Man, he has the powers, but he's a very basic. He is a street level hero to a degree, really, but he's been elevated to a huge position. Another character I can mention is Sam Wilson, the new Captain America. No powers at all. Yeah, and he has he only has wings and a shield.
Yeah,
so
the acting works and the humour works and the situation works and the character in that situation works. I don't feel it works quite so well with this character in this situation.
Then that could be more to the plot than the character itself, because I think
Maybe.
going forward, we'll get into this in spoiler discussion section, I think Ant-Man is going to play a very critical role into the franchise going forward, specifically with, like, you know, Nemesis and everything. Let's move along to Evangeline Lilly, Hope Van Dyne the Wasp, who, or the Ant, as Fergus likes to call
The
her.
other ant.
The flying ant.
I think it was good, but maybe I don't know. I'm just thinking about it back over it now, and maybe could have done more. Maybe there could be more for that character in the movie. I mean, there were a few key scenes that I can recollect, but I don't think she had as much of an impact as she did on the previous film.
I was just going to say, when you said about Evangeline Lilly, I was just like, she did all right. She doesn't make a massive impact in this particular one. I think
she stings a bit, you could say.
Oh God! You're lucky I can't reach you to kick you. I was going to say, like, obviously we'll talk about the rest of the characters, but I think almost the family overall kind of acts as like a character in itself, more so than individual people in that in the family. Maybe you guys agree with that, but that's kind of how I
see that.
Interpreted it, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah.
Not memorable.
Yeah.
Yeah, really not memorable at all. She didn't. The star quality wasn't there. It wasn't coming through.
So she was playing for Wasp, Fergus. So are you saying that it would have been better if she was replaced by an ant?
No. But
the Ant Queen, possibly.
Ant Queen, Wasp Queen. I feel she had relatively no impact on anything apart from maybe punching someone in the face.
She did a lot of the action, didn't she?
Yeah.
But her suit is basically just better than Ant-Man's, pretty much.
It's Ant-Man with wings.
Yeah. So her job kind of seemed to be just.
They have different characteristics. Like, so they have the same power in one aspect, but then they have a different power in a different aspect. So they are balanced out. But yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I think Evangeline Lilly, her role in the movie, because in the sequel, like the original Ant-Man and the Wasp, she did have a much bigger role to play in how her character was coming into her own, and she had a bit part in Endgame and everything. And then in this movie, I think it could have been structured a bit better to give her character more to do. But then I'm thinking about it, and with how this movie was about 2 hours, I don't see how much more she could have had in the movie. I don't know if maybe the whole missing mother aspect, because I know we'll get into the character I was quite impressed by in the movie. I think there was a missing mother and daughter aspect to the movie which could have been played into a bit more, and like the loss there could have been a good emotional pull, and how basically this movie was trying to deal with the father and daughter relationship. It could have dealt with the mother and daughter relationship as well, and that could have been pulled a bit more. And I think we'll get into that in a second when we get to the next character. So obviously the next character I want to talk about is Michelle Pfeiffer as Janet Van Dyne, the original Wasp.
Sorry, Janet Van Dyne, not Catwoman.
Yes, no, well, yeah, true Catwoman, the original Catwoman as well, yeah. But no, so I'll start for this, but I thought she was great in the movie. I love the fact that she didn't have big action sequences, but she was like very integral to the plot. We'll get into the spoiler discussion section. I felt like she carried an emotional heavy weight for the movie. Like you could feel how her missing for 20. The timeline is a bit confusing for this movie.
30 years, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was about 30 years, but it sounded differently in the movie. I like how our character was portrayed. I've got some discussion points in how other people are in this quantum realm, because like that confused me a bit. We'll get into that spoiler discussion.
We should talk about the realm itself at some point. Yes.
Well, I thought she was brilliant in the movie. I'm definitely looking forward to see how she plays into it more in the future. I'm wondering if she will, because obviously she has a relationship to characters within the movie, but it was just a possible character that maybe not playing further. But yeah, that's just how I was with her.
So I think that the actress had a lot to work with in terms of her particular story for this, because there's a lot of kind of mystery and I guess elements that they tease about the time that she had in the quantum realm, which is kind of, you're not really sure necessarily the morality of the character, which is quite interesting. I thought, as you find it unfolding, that gives her quite a lot to do and react to, and others to react to that. So. The actress does do a good job, but I do think that she probably got the lion's share in terms of what the family were doing of stuff to work with, basically.
Yeah.
Fergus is like,
Yeah.
man, she was
So
shit.
balanced, so balanced
Yeah.
with commentary. Fergus.
She did a lot better than Hope, but she had a lot more to work with. The story was her exploring her past, right? So, but again, in terms of the acting, it's okay. Again, like you'd be a lot
Lots of
more.
thespian level acting here, Fergus. Mate,
Well, like you'd be a lot more upset and traumatized if you were going back to a place where you accidentally had to live 30 years under a dictator who hated you and was trying to hunt you down.
True.
Maybe don't say too much as we go into it.
Beep things. Beep.
I mean, maybe it's not that kind of movie in terms of tone, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of thing the MCU plays, kind of like lip service to strong conflicting themes, but they only hint at that kind of like inner conflict, but they don't really develop it as much.
It's a good point. Like, you're right, but perhaps it's not the right type of movie that sort of thing is necessarily.
This is kind of a shame because I mean, I agree with you. If that was developed, I probably would have preferred the film. If that was more, if they go into more those darker aspects of the human psyche and really explore that would be interesting.
Head like
there was like, she did so much, and it was all kind of like, oh yeah, we just did that thing, and it was massive and like worlds changing, and it was like, oh okay.
I mean, when you think about it, though, there was 3 characters in the movie with the focal pinpoints: Ant-Man, Janet, and Kang. Those were the focal points of the movie, really. And then the secondary characters, we're going to the 2 remaining characters now. So Michael Douglas, I will say, I don't really think we could say much about Michael Douglas. He has a narrative part in the movie which plays well. He does have some good, interesting lines and some plot devices, and it comes into it. I think we'll discuss his character of Hank more in the spoiler section, because there's a couple of Deus Ex Machina moments in the movie that play out, and I think he is very integral to those. We'll take it over to probably the rolling out the main cast, Catherine Newton as Cassie Lang, replacing the previous actress who was in Endgame, because obviously we see the previous actress playing Cassie, and then Catherine Newton came in to replace her. So how did we feel about Cassie as introduction properly?
Yeah, I liked her. I thought
sorry, James. It's just Fergus, just like just the fact. Okay,
again, okay, she's dressed as a Spy Kid. She looked quite a lot like a Spy Kid.
She's literally just Ant-Man in purple.
I don't know what it was, but I mean, okay. Again, probably part of the handing down of the generational order of superheroes that Marvel seems to be undergoing in its franchise at the moment. She was okay. Her plot points were very, if you save people, bad things will happen, maybe, which was a bit like...
Do you just hate purple?
No, I don't know.
Just hates ants.
The ants might have been the best bits.
All right.
By the way, she has a different complete name. In the comic book, her name is actually Stature. That's her name in the comic books. It's
but
Stature. Because we'll get to that into the spoiler
section.
Right,
okay.
It goes to spoiler. But yeah, James, you were going to say?
I thought she was alright myself. I thought it was. I don't know. I'm not going to say amazing. I thought okay. Again, my standard view of this film is it's okay. It's average. It's your standard MCU very formulaic flick. It's with just a smattering of with a lot of CGI with some cool effects.
We're definitely going to get into that in a second, to be honest.
But in terms of the character of Statue, who's not mentioned a statue in the film, I mean, it's not really, again, I can't really think of a huge amount to say otherwise, but...
So, I get where you're coming from. I think for myself, I think she had a good part. I thought she had a quite funny intro, to be honest with me. I thought it was quite, it definitely sets her, you get her moral standing at the start of the movie, which I thought was interesting, and also the dynamic with her and her dad, and how basically she doesn't view him the same way he views himself nowadays, and also the fact that she feels he could be doing a lot more, which I think is a good paradigm narrative going into the movie, and I think it plays out going into the narrative further. I do agree with Fergus. There are parts where it's like she's just there for their sake and whatnot, but I do like it kind of roundabout ways to the first Ant-Man movie at one point. We'll talk about it in the spoiler discussion as well. Obviously, Do you have any closing arguments?
You guys have
comments?
mostly covered what I wanted to say, to be honest. I think I agree with you in that some of the stuff at the start, with, her, I don't think this is spoilers, it's start movie, some getting in some trouble with the law, like minor trouble. That was interesting. Yeah, she's alright. She's does the role well enough, but nothing particularly stand out.
Yeah, exactly that.
That's fair. So we'll mention these two very brief characters. So we have Bill Murray and MODOK. We won't say the actor, but we'll say MODOK. So Bill Murray doesn't really have a big part in this movie at all. He's maybe in it for 5 minutes.
The trailers were probably a little bit misrepresentative.
Yeah.
There.
But he was fun for the part he was in. It was a good introduction. It was a good thing for his character, but don't go into this movie to expect a lot of Bill Murray in the movie. Basically, because he actually had some we'll go into the spoiler discussion section. He had some good narrative points which could have played out further into the movie. Would have been interesting. And we're definitely going to talk about this character in the spoiler discussion section. We are going to be talking about MODOK. I feel quite a bit in the spoiler discussion section.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I liked MODOK. There's no way you could have done this character any more seriously. I think that's the best way I can describe it. The character is literally a floating head with tiny, tiny arms and feet. There's no way you could do this character seriously.
No.
Yeah.
I thought the helmet was cool. That's about all I've got to say in terms of not spoilers. It was a cool outfit.
I mean, this film was set in the quantum realm. It misses the comic relief you get from the first two films from Paul Rudd, Ant-Man's crew, and MODOK becomes that kind of...
Yeah.
He's an enemy, but he is the comic relief of the film, basically.
Do you know, Nate, if he's more of a comic relief type villain in the books, or is he more serious?
He actually had an animated show on Disney Plus or Hulu
that.
with Patton Oswalt playing the character.
Of his own, really?
Yeah, of his own.
That's right.
It was only, unfortunately, it was one season. He had a wife and kids. He had one normal child and one daughter who was like him. It was played by Melissa Fumero, Amy Santiago from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. She voiced his daughter.
Right.
It was a very funny show.
This sounds mad.
Also,
Yeah, it is.
I think we'll get into the spoiler discussion section, but he has a tie to the Marvel Avengers game.
Right.
So, by the way, I do recommend playing that game, people. It's only about 8 hours if you play it. It's on Xbox Game Pass if you just want to play the narrative, because it will be shutting down soon, the multiplayer, I believe, which is... Yeah. But there's no way that character could have been done more seriously. Let's roll along. So, obviously, let's get into the actual story itself. So, we'll get into the story, the CGI, how we feel about it, and then we'll finish a round of reviews. So, how did we generally feel about the story?
It feels very much like a setup for further things. As I said, I think some of the most interesting stuff was around the Janet character and some of her past, and revealing that, and also revealing some of the stuff about Kang. Other than that, I think it doesn't stand out too much. I think, as you have started saying, fairly generic superhero story for the most part.
Yeah, I did feel it was. I was watching the film and I was thinking, this is very generic MCU formula. And if the MCU's starting to feel very formulaic to me, you know what the plot beats are going to be.
I'm hoping, going forward, Kevin Feige has said he's going to have more of a hands-on approach coming into Phase 5 onwards, and how Ant-Man does feel as Chaz said, does feel like the starting point for something. And obviously we're getting very out there characters like the Thunderbolts in the new Captain America movie, and others are coming out there. I believe we might be getting an Eternals too, which I'll be intrigued what they do. But the plot myself, I think I enjoyed it. We'll give my review at the end. I wouldn't say it's like a very, very generic plot. I think they do have some interesting aspects. Going into the movie, I do have some reviews have described this movie as the Marvel Star Wars movie, which I could generally see going into. It has a very... It's one of the most sci-fi... Really, to say one of the most sci-fi movies of the Marvel Universe we've had thus far.
And that's actually something that I was going to bring up a little bit later, in that, it's set in the quantum realm, and yet it's very sci-fi, and there's lots of spaceships and things like that, and it's that's a bit of a strange interpretation. So I can see, at least visually, why people are comparing it to Star Wars. I was getting especially... the prequel trilogy vibes a little bit. I don't know about you guys.
We'll talk about it in the spoilers. So there's a couple of shots in the spoiler discussion section I want to talk, which really have definitely give me Star Wars vibes.
Overall, kind of disappointing. It's very much a set-up vehicle for the next generation of Marvel films. In terms of plot points, I think a lot went underexplored in terms of the backstory of Janet Van Dyne. The stuff I think certain characters, MODOK desperately underutilized. Bill Murray extended cameo could have carried some major plot points, didn't. It's like, oh, that's the thing. Oh, that was okay. It was like there was a lot more to potentially explore that they set up that they utterly failed to do.
Yeah.
Oof, brutal.
Really.
all of that. I agree. All of that. They could have gone in some interesting directions, but they kind of like just went kind of like more. I don't know. I suppose kind of like generic against the Empire kind of.
Let me put this question to you then. We'll discuss this before I sketch more. Do you think there was any other Marvel film that they could have introduced Kang in better for this specifically?
I think Ant-Man serves a purpose of being quite so removed from the main timeline of this other superheroes that he's a safe bet to put in something like a major, hey, this is what we're going to do going forwards.
See, I'll talk in the spoiler section more. I kind of disagree a little bit with you on that because, like, I think, like, for such a enemy such as, like, Kang, you know, you have Thanos and everything, who was introduced at the end of, literally, he was introduced properly in Infinity War and everything, and then he had, like, a cameo in Thor: Love and Thunder. To place, like, the next major bad, like, I know when it was first announced that Kang was going to be in the Ant-Man movie, a lot of people were quite shocked that he was going to be introduced in that way. We'll get into the spoiler discussion section because it's not exactly true how that played out, but this version of Kang, who is essentially the most well-known version, I think it goes into the plot of the movie, why he's needed. I like how the reason why Ant-Man is needed in this plot, like, there is a structural purpose as to why he is needed to get into.
Yeah. I'm not sure he was needed. I mean, in response to your answer, I might get an answer in terms of this podcast, but I'm not sure this film was needed, actually. I don't think they needed to. I think they could have just plopped in. I mean, maybe Doctor Strange. Spoiler for the last Doctor Strange multiverse movie, but I suppose it's multiverse movie. Last Doctor Strange one, you could put Kang there, or you could put Kang in the next Doctor Strange movie because that's been set up in a way which might allow for that.
So, I do understand where you're coming from in that regard. So I think it's a case of, like, they do specifically mention how Kang doesn't have access to certain technologies which prevents him from doing certain things. That's why he needs Scott in the movie, which I do like that aspect of it, and it does give us an extremely impressive visual action sequence, I think, getting, like, for the main driving point of the movie. And also I like the fact that, you know, you have this, like, as people say, the Ant-Man fighting Kang, like how he goes about, you know, going up against this character, and I think that works out quite well. Again, we'll do in the spoiler discussion section of how there are some very, how can I put this? As we mentioned, Deus Ex Machina, there's some very easy ways of, like, getting this to finally occur, but
So I do have more on this, but I think it might be straying to spoiler territory if I continue. So I'll
Sure, yeah. I think we can all round out by saying the plot was okay. Some of we think was good. You know, it's you know.
I will say it was quite pretty. The creature design was very good. Some of the more incidental characters, Cheetah from The Good Place was in it.
Yes, he was fun. Yeah,
one of the better characters.
Actually, this is one of the points that I wanted to make just before we do get into spoilers. Is that the thing I probably enjoyed the most about this movie was the visuals, the world building, the character designs, some of the costume stuff. I wasn't quite getting the Spy Kids vibes that you were getting, Fergus. And I think, like, that for me, because I do enjoy, amazing visuals and, exotic worlds being realised on screen. That for me kind of elevated it more than perhaps it would for other people, because for me, visually, and in terms of the landscapes and the setting, it did something quite different to other Marvel movies. I think the closest I've probably seen is Guardians of the Galaxy. So for the most part, that was a really big positive for me. The only thing is, as I said, it's a bit weird that there's spaceships flying around when it's supposed to be a quantum realm. So
yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah, we're gonna get into that. Obviously, I think we'll get into this discussion outside the CGI, the actual visual effects, and the actual designs. Looking into this movie, like compared to a lot of sci-fi movies in general, they had some really unique creature designs in general. Like even Star Wars, Star Trek, we can leave out that because Star Trek is very bipedal. But in a lot of sci-fi, you have a lot of bipedal alien designs. You don't get a lot of like out there designs, and I think Ant-Man of all movies was the one that brought in the creature design uniqueness, and I think taking that into perspective, like going forward, I think it should utilize that going forward, especially with what will we see in Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which will be the final one, or what other movies in phase 5 or 6 that we might get. Because looking at some of the slate for these movies coming out, we're getting very Earth-based like heroes again going forward, and I think if Ant-Man has brought these designs out there, yes, let's utilize them a bit more. And
exactly. Yeah.
I think just how going forward, I think like a lot of people can look at these creature designs going into the movie, which do look quite good, to be honest. Like, we'll talk about the scenery and the environments for the CGI specific, but the CGI and the actual designs was really good in my opinion, and I'm very in love with the character of Veb.
Yes.
We could say, he has an obsession with a certain thing in the movie. We've just learned, like, from the IMDb, he's actually voiced by David Desmalchian, who was in the previous Ant-Man movies. He's obviously Polka Dot Man in Suicide Squad.
Of course, yeah. So, that's where I recognise him from.
Yeah, so it was nice to actually see him in the movie, even though he's really not. Because I will say, he's not in the movie, unfortunately. I was a bit frustrated by this, but Luis,
yes.
he wasn't in this movie.
Yeah, that's what I was mentioned earlier of his Ant-Man's crew, the comic relief.
Yes, I was quite disappointed how they weren't in this movie, and I'm still hoping for one day that a Luis reciting the entire MCU like he does in the comedic timings. Yeah. But yeah, so like running off with the visual effects, the environments, and everything, I think this movie did suffer from COVID filming. That's what it was. So how the environments definitely looked weird. Now, I don't know if that plays into it because it's in the quantum realm, so it's supposed to look a little off.
I don't know. It felt a bit weird, but I think that works in this setting because it's such an out there setting for the film that it's like, it's going to look weird as fuck because it's a tiny, tiny universe within, the quantum realm. So
you can definitely tell it's setty, though. Like, you can definitely tell, like, a lot of... Like, you get into, like, some films, you get, like... You can't tell it's sets, but you could definitely tell in this movie...
I suppose so.
Sets.
I think I got wrapped up, to be honest. Like, I don't know. I just love...
Oh, no, don't get me wrong.
Visual movies like this, so...
I thought it was, the fact that, we'll go into spoiler discussions, but the actual vastness of the actual quantum realm, like, the actual structures, is quite impressive. Going, it's much bigger than I expected.
Some of the, like, the rips in the sky and all the cloud formations and all these, like, mad landscapes. That was awesome. I really enjoyed that.
And some interesting Mad Max inspirations. We'll get into the spoiler discussion as well. It plays into it. But, I did like, I think the CGI for the movie could have been a bit better in some aspects. I've been looking back at the Iron Man movies back in the day and, like, some of the previous Marvel movies. And those VFX really hold up to this day. And, like, there's some running animations in this movie which looked very, like... didn't look right in my opinion, like, and it could just be the case because it's a tiny character, but at the same time you could just film a person running as a tiny character and then CGI in and whatnot. I think there was some CGI that was a bit floaty, like Kang's face when the visor came down for him was a bit...
That's a bit odd.
Yeah, his face seemed like it was like zoomed in a bit, like when the blue face shield came down, which don't get me wrong, I thought maybe it's just a visual effect for, like, make his face more wider for the movie essentially. But I think, like, we are starting to see, like, a thing with visual effects in superhero movies that are starting to pressured basically. And I'm hoping with, like, as Chaz mentioned, taking the break between shows coming out, this gives a bit of breathing room for VFX crews to actually work on stuff.
Kind of feels like we're getting to the point where, and I'm not an expert by any means, but it feels like we're getting to the point where the advances in CGI technology are not making up for lack of production and lack of time and manpower. So if movie companies are not putting the resources and the effort into the CG, some of the results at the end are showing it.
I think this also could... again, right, I think like also the films we've had during COVID are like Black Widow and some of the other Marvel movies and everything have had visual effects which people have noticed, but people have also got to take into consideration these movies were created really during the COVID time, so there was a whole issue there. So I'm wondering going forwards how visual effects are going to be, and I'd like to see how that looks.
Yeah, it's very, very little happens in the outside world. Like 99% of the film is within this quantum realm, which is all green screen, which might also impact the level of acting in the quantum realm and not having real
I will say,
people to react to.
Going on Chaz's point, the prequels were filmed in the same aspect, I feel, in how like they didn't really. I don't think they probably. There may be some volume technology for this movie, possibly, but I think a lot of it was green screen and how the prequels were using green screen.
That's a good point. Maybe that's why they reminded me of the prequels so much, because I couldn't quite put my finger on it apart from all the spaceships. But yeah, maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, because I remember Ewan McGregor had a comment like when he filmed the prequels, he preferred Obi-Wan because it was real sets or virtual sets, and like it wasn't just green basically. But yeah, so obviously I think like visual design for the movie is great. I think we'll all agree on that. CGI was, we could definitely tell it was interesting to say the least. Acting was good for most of us. Average for Fergus, which was going to be interesting. But yeah, no, I think for this movie in general, though, like wrapping it up for like the actual review section, I would say go see this at the cinema. I think this is a cinema movie.
Yeah.
Like I would say, like just for the visuals alone, I think like the narrative wise, I think we could say you could just watch this at home if for just the narrative. But I think for the visuals of this movie alone, I think it is good to see it in the cinema. If you can see it in IMAX, which we didn't unfortunately, but seeing this in IMAX, or I don't know if they did a 3D version of this movie, would have been very interesting to us if they did that.
Yeah, I think it definitely would pay off having to see it in IMAX, and also it's not that long, as Nate mentioned. It's I think pretty much around 2 hours. Which, if you're not that fond of sitting in a cinema for a long time, then you don't have to. So, yeah, I think even though, it's got a lot of mixed reviews, if you do want to see it, I would say cinema is worth the money just purely, as I said, on the visual basis.
Yeah.
Maybe just find a cheap cinema to go to. Just a cheap cinema to go to. I mean, we went to a £10 cinema, like here in where we're based, and so I think rounding off from myself. So let's just get into the review. Let's get into our roundups. I've done my roundup basically. Cast was great. Cast was good for the most part. Narrative was decent. It wasn't the best MCU stories, but we haven't had that in a little bit. To be honest, I'm not gonna lie. We've had like the odd one. Wakanda Forever, I felt was really good. The actual visuals for the movie I thought were extremely interesting. Bit weird to a degree, but I think that facilitates the quantum realm. And I'm definitely interested to seeing how Scott Lang plays into the future of the MCU, because I think the ending of this movie, it ends on an interesting note that you don't usually expect a lot of the time. I think he's going to be a vital part of the MCU going forward, and obviously with Paul Rudd being in his 50s now, he can't play Ant-Man for he could, I guess, 15 years if he wanted to, at least 10 years, because Tom Cruise is in his 60s now. But
and plus, Paul Rudd doesn't age.
This is very, very true, to be honest. And I think maybe Ant-Man's character might have to have a finalization coming into Secret Wars, which is the culmination of the multiverse saga. I'm just looking forward to see how this plays out. The post-credit scenes, we can mention briefly without spoiling them. I feel that at least one of them was extremely interesting, going forwards. I'm really interested how it plays out. Visually, it's weird. It's very weird. It's the mid-credit sequence I'm specifically talking about. The final sequence teases something for something coming out this year. We don't want to spoil it for you. We're very interested going forwards. We'll do that in the spoiler discussion section. But yeah, we'll get the final review roundups from interest, and then we'll give our scores. So, Chaz, you want to go first?
Yeah, so for me, as I said, strongest point, the visuals and the specifically the creativity in them. Some of the creature design in the landscape, I really like that stuff. So that was a major plus. The characters were enjoyable. I think it's a really strong introduction for Kang, as you said. I hope they don't overuse him, but I think good strong start there. And yeah, other than that, fairly standard for a Marvel movie, and yeah, it felt a little bit like it was there to show us something different visually and set up a lot of future stuff coming up.
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of that. The visuals were good, the creature designs were good. It's very reminiscent of Made in Abyss, the anime, if you've seen it.
I have not, but nice to get that little anime reference in there.
Yay. Acting poor, story plot points generally poor, costume design, think Spy Kids poor.
I do have to intercut there. You'd say acting poor, but you
generally, I mean, Kang is the only exception. It's Kang's movie, really.
all about that Kang.
Yeah, it's no one else mattered, I don't think. But yeah, generally, a relatively low mark from me. Are we giving numbers yet?
We'll give
We'll
let
do
James
numbers
do his
in a
round,
bit.
then we'll give our
Yeah.
numbers.
So, generic MCU movie with sci-fi trappings and but great visuals.
That was the most condensed way. Fair play.
He
man,
basically
that
said
is-
what all of us said, but
Yeah.
better.
But yeah, so we'll do the review roundup now. So, actual value roundup. So let's just do it. Fergus, give us the number.
I think I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Really?
Well, do you know what? I'm
Is
not
that
too
low?
surprised.
High?
We
4.
Yeah.
we were just looking at the review scores at the start from IMDb and
Yeah,
such,
that's true.
and I think that we're probably going to reflect that ourselves, to be honest.
Okay.
I'll just say it because I'm talking. I would say a 7 personally.
Okay.
I mean, I'm in between a 6 and a 7. If we can do 0.5s, I'll go 6.5.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
we'll do 0.5.
I'll go
So
6.5.
I'm gonna give it a 7 myself.
Hmm.
Fergus is just the one bringing like the actual value
No,
down
it was.
here.
Yeah.
So Fergus brings this down to a 6, people. Is it? Yeah, it would be a 6 if I'm correct.
What did
or
you give
5.
everything everywhere again?
More than a 4.
I know that.
No. You gave it almost like an 8 or a 9 actually.
Yeah.
Oh, was it?
I
What was the
think
one
so.
you said was like? Oh, the Batman.
The
that was
Batman,
it.
but
Yeah.
that's still significantly higher than 4.
Yes. Fair enough.
That is fair, to be honest, yeah. So, obviously, Fergus is a 4, Chaz is a 7, James is a 6.5, and I'm a 7. So this does actually round this out. If we're doing it equal, it rounds this out to a NMI 6 out of 10.
Yep.
Because Fergus had to bring the fucking
To be
number
honest, I
down.
I think that's fair.
I think 6 out of 10 is perfectly fair and pretty much reflects what the internet seems to be saying as well.
I think we're actually being fairer to this movie as well, like some scores, to be honest.
Oh, that's just people being like, oh.
Dicks? Assholes?
Only
Some of them at least.
0 out of 10 and 10 out of 10 exists. Everything else is not a viable score.
Yeah, I
apparently.
get that.
Well, if I just completely randomly, I know Fergus keeps calling Ant-Man and the Wasp Ant-Man and the Ant, but I just thought of a better title for these movies, which I should have gone with, and I would have called them Honey, I Shrunk Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
Oh, I definitely did see some visual, like reminiscent of like how he slid in this movie and getting attacked and everything, which did feel reminiscent of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. But that's the title of the episode, people. Perfect. I think that's actually the title of the episode: Honey, I Shrunk Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
And not Ant-Man review. That's gonna be the actual thing for this. And we might put brackets Ant-Man review, but.
Yeah.
James has named the episode. To be honest, I think that's an amazing contribution since he'll be fucking off for the second recording. Like. Done, people. But yeah, so obviously, people, we have done the review section. We're now going to get in like a small spoiler discussion section, probably like 15 minutes. I don't want to do this too long. So obviously, you're going to have your final warnings now, people. In like, we're going to go to spoiler discussion section 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So right, is Kang the Conqueror gone?
Yes.
Really?
No.
Well, that version of him, but obviously there are loads everywhere else.
They go by other names, right? You were saying.
So, right.
Yes.
Okay, so we could talk about the actual, like, post-credit scene or
Yes.
mid-credit scene. So in the mid-credit scene, we are introduced to the Council of Kangs.
Yes.
Or the Colosseum of Kangs, as it's called, which is actually literally a comic book panel. So if we bring up the actual mid-credit scene, so basically, we are introduced to Immortus, who is the guy with the really big hat who talks like he needs a cough sweet. We have Ramatut, who went back to ancient Egypt, and I don't remember the other character's name, but it basically introduces us to a whole slew of characters. And what I found interesting about this is like they banished this character, which I was very interested to see why they banished this character specifically. Now, I'm wondering how this will play out going forwards, because, as James said, this variant is gone, but how many versions of the Conqueror are actually out there?
Well, I mean, we saw there's fucking thousands of them, seemingly.
Yeah.
The reason I was personally saying I hope they don't overuse this character is that obviously we saw that there's a lot of versions of Kang out there who have now all been gathered at in one place. So the 3 major ones that we were introduced to in the post-credit scene, they seem quite unique. Even though they're the same person, they obviously a very different look. They speak differently. So hopefully that doesn't happen. I guess the only thing that stood out to me as well is all those other thousands of Kang. Are they going to end up like cannon fodder almost?
I think that's how it's going. I think literally because we've got the Kang Dynasty, which a lot of people are thinking. Now they mentioned in the mid-credit sequence how the Avengers have finally broken the multiverse barrier. Now I'm wondering what's going to happen is in Secret Wars, it's going to be every not MCU, just Marvel character from every multiverse coming in and fighting this entire war. It's every. Because in Secret Wars, it is heroes fighting heroes on a battle planet. Is it going to be everything is just put together and the Kangs are fighting every Marvel version, which Jonathan Majors is going to be acting his fucking ass off, basically.
So I might be derailing this a little bit, but it's kind of relevant adjacent. It's still what we were talking about in the non-spoiler section, but where I would like to introduce, if I had introduced Kang, what I would have introduced him as, and again, I said the next Doctor Strange movie because that's to do with like an incursion.
Yep.
But I don't know if that's necessarily quite the right way. But I would have liked to have seen him introduce a film where the character is in who we're following, the hero we're following is in a different realm, in a different multiverse, and they're fighting Kang, but they lose. That hero is probably able to get back into the our verse. But then Kang wins in that multiverse, therefore actually properly on screen establishing him as a threat, as somebody who can win, like Thanos in Infinity War.
So that's a good point because Kang in the movie does actually mention killing tons of Avengers.
He mentions it, but we don't see it.
We don't see it, and that would have been pretty cool to see actually. Yeah, not gonna lie.
So obviously, right, I'm gonna have to say now, right. So do you guys care if I talk about Loki? The TV show.
No, go ahead. This is
So,
spoiler
in
section.
the final episode of Loki, the TV show, we are introduced to He Who Remains, which is a variant of Kang, played by Jonathan Majors. Is introduced in. He's literally very calm, demeanor character. He is in charge of the TVA.
Okay.
He's been in control in this sacred timeline, this one timeline that's protecting the multiverse. So, incursions don't occur, variations don't occur. He explains that basically, like when Sylvie and Loki go into the chamber, that basically he is protecting this timeline from other variations of himself. He's already gone through a variant war. He fought himself in multiple versions. He has fought basically his characters from the 25th century, and he discovered time travel and then many variants of himself, had a war with all these heroes, all these multiverses, and it ended with him remaining, He Who Remains. Sylvie and he warns them, if you kill me, you are breaking the multiverse, and this is how it goes forwards. So basically, in Ant-Man Quantumania, you see Kang putting his hand up and holding a sacred ring, like a one-ring timeline. Now I'm wondering how that comes into the effect of, was that the sacred timeline that broke essentially at this point? Because Kang, the Conqueror, is out of everything, so he couldn't get out, so he knew of everything going forwards. And going forwards with He Who Remains killed, like, this has all happened before. So Kang the Conqueror would have been the version who fought He Who Remains before. It's this whole time travel. The influx of time loops episode is going to be very. I think we need to revisit this with the MCU going forward, because this is going to be a mind fuck going forward, basically. And I know people. So people have said that the Kang Dynasty. A rumor is that they want Kang in a universe with no superheroes. So the Kang Dynasty would be a film. Half of it being no superheroes in the movie, basically variants of heroes that have no superpowers, and like half the movie would be that, and then it would be the realization of that. And supposedly, Spider-Man is going to play a major part going forwards.
Or alternatively, we could have like a movie which is built from kind of a movie that's inspired by what's that Eddie Murphy movie, where it's just Kang and it's like a sitcom and it's just multiple Kangs.
Oh, you mean Nutty Professor?
I can't remember. I'm sure it was a movie where Eddie Murphy
I know the
plays
scene you
multiple-
mean. Yeah, I think you
multiple
do mean.
characters.
Yeah.
I can say it was very weird seeing multiple Jonathan Majors on screen at once.
Well, this is why I'm concerned about trying to use him too much. But as I said, I think if you stick to those three,
You're not. That's the problem.
well, that's the thing. Like,
Also, the other one was called the Scarlet Centurion, by the way,
right?
because he was very robotic.
Yeah, that's my big worry. To be honest, I don't want them to overuse this character. They've established him well initially in this film, so yeah, don't.
I can
drive
say
into the
though, the
ground.
visuals though was pretty identical to the comic book panel of the Kangs, like cheering and everything. Like it was pretty identical to us.
Not the
But
costumes.
yeah, no.
Yeah, that's,
and obviously the post-credit scene is Loki season 2.
Yeah.
And the character is called. Actually, no, I won't spoil the name of him because just in case you watch it, because I haven't seen it myself yet. But supposedly that version of Kang is actually very dangerous, which will be very interesting going forwards.
I am quite concerned about having quite so many Kangs going into quite so many universes. Like, it risks the Marvel Universe as it currently is kind of cannibalizing itself. Like, it's like basically turning around and saying, well, we're done, better just slaughter everything in every version ever, because it's just get too much as well. Like, the Avengers ending, like, super films where everyone turns up on the battlefield, that was just enough people, and that was after a decade of setting up all these people. But if it turns into a million Kangs turning up randomly and just slaughtering, it's just going to get too much, too confusing. I'm not going to know who's from where.
So, yes and no, because like 10 years, right, to get to Endgame. This would be 8 years, or 8.5, or almost 9 years, because the thing about splitting Secret Wars into two.
Yeah.
It's like Endgame and Infinity War. So it would be the same length of time, but also, you got to remember, this is the problem with so much content. I think they're slowing down a bit now. There's TV and film connected now going into this.
Yeah, I feel like I've probably missed a lot of the TV. See the next episode for more on this one. It doesn't feel like the build-up's been anywhere near the same as the previous generation of Marvel.
I think a lot of people have described how Phase 4 is about grief and loss. Like, that was the wrap-up for Phase 4. It was like people losing people, new heroes coming into the mix and everything. I mean, Spider-Man was fucking depressing as hell, really, by the end of it. You know, he lost everything. But with Phase 5 being quite longer, and Phase 6 being longer with all these other things, I think padding it out for these two phases, it will be interesting going forward. I know I wanted to bring up, in regards to just in general Kang's mode of transport, but also linking to Shang-Chi and Miss Marvel, how her kinetic bands and Shang-Chi's rings look very similar to Kang's rings from the movie. So obviously we're looking at visuals of Kang's ship in the movie and how like has these like designs, but looking at Shang-Chi's rings, they have a very similar, unique design, and obviously the bands came to Earth from space. You know, and same as Kamala Khan, we don't know, you know, she comes from another realm, a void and everything. So, and obviously, if we've all seen Shang-Chi. We all seen Shang-Chi? Okay, so basically at the end of Shang-Chi, there's a thing where basically a signal in space, but they don't know where the signal's coming from, and it's linking to the rings. I'm thinking the effects of the end of Ant-Man have sent this quantum like signal, and it's linking to everything, it's bringing everything together, basically. So it'll be interesting going forward to see how those characters play into it. It's basically starting to put all these things in place to bring everything together. I do agree, if they can pull it off, like, you know, get this woven web connected, it could be amazing. It could be bigger than Endgame. But if it's that one thread that snaps, that can pull it apart.
I agree with you. I think, they're obviously trying to set up another big set of movies to build up to a big conclusion, but I think they've got to tread very carefully. It could very easily just become confusing and like overdrawn, and don't waste this character. He seems cool. It's a good start. Don't
My
use him
concern is
too
Deadpool. My genuine concern is Deadpool. How are you going to bring in Deadpool? This character who is, I mean, from the things I've heard, is he is the one who's going to break the multiverse. That's what I've heard. Like, which is kind of on point for his character.
Well, true.
But also, in my opinion, I think Scarlet Witch could have been used much better in that regard because she's a Nexus being on Kang's level.
She's still about, right?
What's that?
She's still about, right?
Not really. Doctor Strange. Well, sorry, she isn't about at the end of Doctor Strange, but there's no way you're getting rid of Elizabeth Olsen because she is an amazing actress, and there's no way you're doing that. And I think she could have played. I would have actually had her included to some degree early on for the whole Kang story. Like Kang is trying to get rid of Nexus beings, and like she's a major threat to him basically, and like play that into the narrative a bit more. Would have been interesting to see. Let's move off Kang for a bit. We'll get to a few things I want to talk about. Let's talk about the big head in the room, MODOK.
Oh right, I forgot about him.
I horribly underutilized. Spoiler: he dies. Which
also spoiler, it's yellow jacket.
Yellow
Kevin?
Skull.
Is his name Kevin?
Darren.
Darren the Big.
Daryl.
Very memorable.
From the first
I remember his face, just not his name. I remember he was a dick.
You can't forget his face this time.
Yeah.
Or his tiny little booty.
Oh,
His
Jesus
which
Christ.
which was
Yeah.
not needed.
No, it wasn't. I almost I kind of understand what they were going for. I said a bit of comic relief, but I don't know. I kind of like the suit better. Just have him be an angry thing in a
There's
suit.
no way you
I
could have
don't
done him cleverly. There's no, he is a.
It looks. I'll be honest. That's one bit of CGI I actually didn't like. I thought the visuals were great, but I think.
Well, it's just
I
weird.
His face did look a
MODOK
bit
to me,
weird.
on the screen, it reminded me of kind of like that kind of like 90s kind of.
Spy Kids was a Shark Boy and
Is
Lava
it?
Girl. There's a
Oh, okay. I've
character
not
with
seen
like his face on like a screen. Like he
Yeah.
looks like MODOK to a point, and a lot of people make comparisons to that. But I will say, like, his line delivery was, the jokes were a bit off with him.
Yeah.
I will say I do like the aspect of him and Cassie having a connection, and because I like how they fought each other at the end, because she was held hostage by him in the first movie, but she's the one who fought him at the end pretty much. I liked that aspect of the movie. I like the fact that even in this realm he gets bitch slapped by Kang around, even though he's a machine designed only for killing.
Honestly, I just remembered that I was actually really uncomfortable watching it because it was just like cringe, to be honest. Like, I don't think that character hit very well. Every time he turned up, I was like, oh.
It could have been done a lot better, and if he had been done a lot better, he could have had his own movie. Like, I know there was the standalone animated series of Kang, which was really good.
So MODOK.
MODOK.
And
Yes.
he's in Marvel's Avengers game. He turns out to be the final villain in the Marvel's Avengers game. Basically, there's a race in there. His head gets infected, and his head starts growing throughout the game, and that's how he becomes MODOK. It plays into it. It's an interesting way. It's a slow development to that character, and a lot of people pretty much realised it was him. A lot of people also said, looks like Humpty Dumpty cracked his head open again. But again, I like the fact that they did him. I do think they could have utilised him much better. Corey Stoll probably had the easiest gig possible in this movie, like just literally capturing his face the entire time. Great act. Corey Stoll's a great actor as well. He's been in many other things, and obviously I liked him as Yellow Jacket in the first movie, which they played into that more. Maybe body manipulation, because like he didn't have like shrunken arms and feet. It was just his head that was left, and they had to give him mechanical parts. Possibly would have been better.
You said you were glad that he was in this, and you're glad they brought him back. I'm almost not. I feel like you don't necessarily have to tie off every loose end. What happened to him before is just like, like you could have just left it there. Personally, I don't know. It's a small point. I wasn't that bothered about the character, but as I said, he kind of put me off a bit.
Let's go on to Hank Pym. His character was very there to literally drive the final. So obviously, there's this whole did Janet Van Dyne have relationships with men during her time in the Quantum World, which is hinted at in the movie.
It is. It's not. It doesn't seem like a big deal.
No, but there's like a comment. There's a couple of commented notes, and you see looks and everything in the movie. That's a couple of the points in the movie for him. But also, he now has ants that have lived thousands of years, and they're now
technology.
Super ants.
typical. Yeah, I mean, it's stuff like that. I'll be honest. I don't mind MCU movies, but it is stuff like that where it's just when my eyes roll a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they had to have something like that, the way they set it up, because they were losing. So something big had to come in.
I'd tell you what. Very end of the film, I'll tell you how I wanted it to end. Well, I thought this was how they might have been bold enough to end it this way, and I thought, are you actually going to do this? But no, they didn't. And that is, right at the very end, it looked like Ant-Man, and everybody else has been saying, but it looked like Ant-Man might lose.
Yeah.
And so I had two thoughts. If we were bold enough to maybe kill off Ant-Man, that would have been shocking. But the other option for me would have been when the Wasp came in and saved Ant-Man, but they were temporarily trapped in the quantum realm.
Keep them there. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That would have been... And that is the ending that I would have chosen and been bold enough to have done that. And I would have found a way to have destroyed the... you could have said that their device was essentially destroyed, which allowed them to get into the quantum realm. As we got into it, it was destroyed, or
so
Kang was.
For me, I actually would have liked Ant-Man and Kang to go out together. So
Okay,
the only the line. There's a line in the movie.
Right.
I don't have to win. We just both have to lose.
Yeah.
I think that would have. But also, don't kill them, because obviously you're in the quantum realm, time travel, and everything. He just gets lost to time or a place, and then it comes in a later movie that maybe like this version of Kang the Conqueror, after being with Ant-Man for so long, did change his ways. And then there's another version of the Conqueror later on, and it's the whole aspect of Ant-Man's come back as an integral character, and it is a shock factor. The whole this character returns, how everyone got dusted in Infinity War. Have that level of Ant-Man coming back, but Ant-Man is now this really important character, because he was, think about it, Endgame he was an extremely important character. Have him disappear at the start of this multiverse saga, the huge start for the multiverse saga, and then have him come in as the joke character that everyone was against and everything. Why are you doing an Ant-Man movie? Have him be a good tie-off for this entire... Because I do think going forwards in how Scott touched the quantum engine, and he's got this visions and everything, and how he's got this self-doubt in himself, like, have I just started destroying everything, and am I going to destroy everything? I think Ant-Man is going to be very, very critical to the end of the multiverse saga. I think he and a couple of other characters are going to be very essential, quintessential going forwards.
I think you're right, but I just find it strange. Like, of all characters, like Ant-Man, he's the key to everything. But maybe they do that in the comics, I don't know.
But like how Iron Man was the character that started off the MCU, and he was a B-level character in the comic books, and how he became such a critical point.
True,
but he was good.
Well...
They were good films.
No, I was going to say, I guess he's a bit more of a standard hero, and he's got a bit of a different tone, a different kind of presence on screen than Ant-Man does.
The way I see it is, Ant-Man started off as a Robin Hood type character, going from the rich, and he ended up in prison. He's an ex-con, but then he ends up being this huge heroic character at the end of his journey, and seeing how that plays out. I think that would have worked out quite well, to be honest. I think it also gives room to Cassie to evolve as a character. It could give Hope more to do more of a role with Cassie's character. And then when Paul Rudd comes back in later, he's been on an evolved journey with Kang, possibly. I don't know, do a Bill and Ted's Big Adventure one off with Kang and Scott, Kang and Lang, call it Kang and Lang, and I'm just fucking with you people, but it'd be stupid to do. But it would just be interesting to see how that plays out. And cause if Spider-Man, Ant-Man, and a couple of other characters are the integral parts of the finishing off the multiverse saga, it'd be interesting to do. One other person I will mention is Doom. So Doom is coming. We all know this. Doctor Doom is coming at some point. He actually has a major link to Kang. I won't say in this episode. Just Google it, people. Right. It's very interesting to see how he'll play into it going forwards, and I'm just wondering how that will play out. But again, for this movie, I do agree with all of us here. The ending was very. It wasn't paint by numbers essentially, but you knew everyone was pretty much safe towards the end.
Yeah, and like I was kind of disappointed with that because I was quite tense for a bit because it kind of looked like they were going to do something a bit different. They definitely implied that, and I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." And they're going to do what they're going to do with the villain, what they're going to do with Scott, but yeah, they just.
And it would have been. I think I'd have liked the film a lot better if they were bold enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's why Infinity War was such a good film, because they were one film where they were bold enough to essentially change the formula of.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, but yeah, so they did the unexpected in Infinity War.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. There. But I do want to finish this off with a quote from a very favourite character from the movie Veb. I have holes!
Yeah.
I actually quite enjoyed his character in the movie. Or drink his juice.
Was it drink the fluid, drink the goop? I can't remember what they said.
Yeah,
but yeah.
For the language thing. Which
I
is
thought,
it was an interesting thing. I'm glad they did it and they weren't just like, oh, everyone speaks English in the Quantum.
Well, you know, in Guardians of the Galaxy, because they have a chip on their neck, so that's able to talk.
I wish
to
I
each
could go
other.
to the pub, buy like a half pint, and suddenly speak Chinese or something. That'd be good. But yeah.
I mean, some people think they can, to be honest. But
Yeah.
but no, so obviously, you know, we gave this a 6 out of 10 for our review people. I think this. Bill Murray's character, he's literally there. He was an old rebel friend of Michelle Pfeiffer, and then he dies. That's literally his character in the movie. He's there for 5 minutes at most.
Wow.
But yeah, no, I think interestingly going forward, we did spend a lot of discussion on the mid-credit scene because I think that did need more discussion than most of the thing in the movie, because the narrative plot points in the movie are very straightforward. But no, I'm glad we all did that. To be honest, I'm glad we did that. So we are going to do the outro now. We're going to, that's it, people. We've done our Ant-Man spoiler discussion review. We've done the review. I'm glad we all did that and everything. So obviously join us for the next episode where we actually will be recording that very shortly, but James will be disappearing.
Bye.
And but yeah, if you've got any questions, comments, people, did you enjoy Ant-Man the movie? Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
You mean Ant-Man and the Ant?
Ant-Man and the Ant.
You mean Honey, I Shrunk Paul Rudd?
Oh, sorry, yes.
Honey, I Shrunk Paul Rudd. That's correct, people. Honey, I Shrunk Paul Rudd. And if you've got any questions for that, please email us at nmipodcastoutlook.com. That's nmipodcastoutlook.com. That'll be on our social page, so you can click on that. Our socials, Instagram and Twitter. Give us a good like on there. Bump us up on there at NMIcast. Hopefully you're enjoying all the animated promos we're doing as well. Those definitely trying to be unique with those. We've already done Fergus shrinking as Mario, so maybe we'll have to do the opposite way for Fergus shrinking as he grew as Mario, but maybe we could shrink you as Ant-Man now and do that. Yeah. And see how that plays out. But yeah, people, I've been your host, Nate. I want to thank James, Fergus and Chaz for joining me today.
Cheers.
It's been fun.
Thank you. Bye.
But yeah, people, stay safe. We'll speak to everyone next week. Okay, see you all on. Bye-bye.
Bye.